Well, first off, I'm very glad that you guys all got cocktails before I started speaking. That should make me even a little bit more palatable today. So, in all reality, thank you everybody who's in attendance. I really appreciate y'all's time and letting me speak to you guys today. And from TD Synex, huge thank you to Smarter Systems as well. Thank you guys for putting this together and letting me come on here, and we're big fans of you guys. So, again, as Lori said, I'm going to be speaking to you all about the Poly Studio solutions. Poly's really done some incredible things in the past 2 years now that have we've really seen take off in the marketplace, and I'll get into that as we move through this presentation. But just to get us started, I wanted to talk about Poly a little bit as a company. Who is Poly, and why should you guys care when you hear that name? Poly was formed when Polycom and Plantronics merged back in 2018, and Polycom was an absolute giant in the audio video space, and they merged with Plantronics, who was the industry leader in headsets. So it was a partnership that really just kind of made sense because they can now give customers like yourselves access to full scale communication solutions, really from top to bottom. So whether you're looking for something as simple as a headset to some of their more robust solutions like installed voice and stuff like that, they can do it all now. So it's exciting times for Poly. And just to kind of touch on some of their relevancy and reputation, again, this isn't a flashy, shiny new startup that's trying to get off the ground. This is an established giant in the industry. They've been doing this for a very long time, and they've been doing it well. 100% of Fortune 500 companies currently are utilizing Poly devices in some form or fashion. So again, be that on the headset side or their phone systems or their video in their conference rooms or all of the above. Everyone in the Fortune 500 is utilizing Poly devices at this point in time, and they're doing it to a tune of $2 billion annually. So it's an impressive company. Actually, if you talk to the Poly folks, you may hear the story of back in 1969, actually, when Buzz Aldrin and the Apollo folks went to the moon. That was Poly headsets that they were using. So they've been around for quite some time. And a big focus right now in the workplace and also of this presentation is, we've seen a lot of movement to the cloud. Cloud migration has been a huge topic of discussion in the communication space. Poly took a very unusual and, in my opinion, brilliant approach to the migration to the cloud. Whereas a lot of hardware vendors kind of panicked as things were moving away from on-prem hardware to more of those operating expense as a service hosted solutions. A lot of those hardware companies panicked. They started to try and develop their own cloud platforms, and some of them are still struggling with that today. Poly decided, hey, we are a hardware company. We're great at what we do. Why don't we just continue to make hardware and we'll make it work seamlessly with any cloud platform? So again, if you're looking at Teams, if you're looking at Zoom, if you're looking at some of those third-party or proprietary platforms, hosted platforms, Poly is going to work with everything seamlessly. So just a quick brief history of them and why you should care, but Poly is a big player in this space. And again, just wanted to highlight here, this specific slide is focused on Microsoft and Microsoft Teams, because that is, a huge UCaaS player right now. I think I saw that there's, 190 new team users a day, but this isn't really just about Teams. This is just to show that Poly's been working with cloud providers for 15 years, and they have extremely tight integration. So they know what they're doing when it comes to filling that void of hardware that's still as necessary today as it was 10 years ago, in these cloud environments. So be it Zoom, be it Teams, be it anybody else, they know how to work with these cloud platforms, and they have the tightest integration in the industry. So getting into the actual studio lines, the bread and butter that we really came here to talk about. I'm not going to spend too much time on this first product grouping, but did just want to kind of throw it out there because uh, these are part of the Poly Studio family. They're the P series, so they're personal series. But these two devices that I'm going to show you can actually be good fits for smaller personal breakout rooms, smaller huddle rooms. Think any rooms where you may have 1 to 3 people. These are going to be probably a good fit where you might not need something as robust as a full room solution. And the first product on that line is the Poly Studio P15. And as you see here, it's what you have is you have Poly's P5 webcam, which is top of the line, audio and video. That's built into the center there, and it's built into the center of a sound bar for Poly. So this is a really simple device, as you can kind of see at the bottom there. It can clip onto the back of your monitor, clip onto the back of your display if you're using a larger display. But you plug it in and you're ready to go. And again, it's open SIP, so it can work with any of these platforms, but it's also Team certified if that's what you guys are using. The second device in that personal studio is the Poly P21. And as you can see here, this is kind of an all-in-one. It's your display, it's your microphones, it's your speakers, it's your camera. It's everything out of the box. And again, it's aesthetically, it's very pleasing to the eye. It's got some great features like their backlit screen, which, you know, if you're in a dark room, it'll make you look really good. I've tested it, trust me. And the cool thing about this too is even if you're not utilizing, you know, if you're not in a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting or any sort of meeting, when you're not using this device, it has a PC Mac display. So you're getting some additional functionality out of that where you can run any sort of app with it. And again, these two devices can sometimes be a really good fit for those smaller huddle spaces, those smaller breakout rooms. But what we really want to talk about is the Poly Studio X family and the room solutions. And so as you can see here, I've got a picture of the Poly Studio X30 and the Poly Studio X50. And I wanted to highlight a few things on this slide. One, I wanted to give you a picture of the two beside each other so you can see the difference. Again, with the X50, you're getting a bigger sound bar. That's really the main difference. Again, Poly's approach with this line has been simplicity. So you're not going to be dealing with a ton of cords. You don't see a lot of cords hanging out in this picture. You don't see ceiling drop microphones. You don't see any speakers or cameras you got to mount anywhere. You're going to be getting this sound bar with the camera and that beautiful touch control over there, which you can actually get these with or without the touch control, and they'll actually work with an iPad as well. However, we highly recommend you get the TC8, which is what's pictured here, just to give you a little bit better functionality. So what I really wanted to highlight here is the native video solution. So what I mean by native video solution, and this is going to be important. This is something I really want you guys to take away from this as you're evaluating some options. A great question to ask is, am I going to be getting a native experience? If you're in a Teams environment or you're in a Zoom environment, or let's say you're using a direct routing platform and you know that is your UC system for your organization. You're using it every day on your computer. You're using it every day on your phone. You know, if you use Teams every day, then that's what you're comfortable with. You're going to want that same ease and simplicity in your conference rooms as well. So a great question to ask is am I going to be getting that native video experience? And with the Poly Studio X, you will be. So what you can do is, and again, I'm using Teams as the example here, but it works across platforms. Um, let's say you have a Teams meeting. You can actually just send the meeting invite as you would, if you're asking anyone to join a meeting internally or externally. You send that invite to the conference room. Go to the conference room. You're going to look at your display and it's going to look like Teams on your computer. It's going to operate the same way that it does on your computer. You're not going to have to do any sort of configuring. You're not going to have to open up apps and play around in there. We want it to be very easy so that if you have a CEO going in there who, let's be honest, if he can't start the meeting, nobody's happy. He's going to be able to walk right in, one touch, he's in the meeting. So native video experience is something that you're really going to want to keep in mind when you're evaluating options. Additionally, one of the great things about the Poly Studio X series is that they have what's called one touch join. So again, if you run Teams internally, but maybe you get a invite to a meeting from one of your external customers and they run Zoom, so they send you a Zoom meeting. With this device, you're going to be able to just one touch join from that Teams platform. You're not going to have to download a Zoom app. You're not going to have to mess around with different apps. It's going to be very simple for you. So that one touch join is very critical as well. But now getting into the specifics of each device. And let's start with the Poly Studio X30. So again, with this, you've got an all-in-one solution. As you can see here, you've got your sound bar with your camera in it and your TC8 controller. That's all that comes out. So it is an extremely easy device to deploy. You're not dropping mics out of the ceiling. You're not mounting cameras. You're not, drilling different speakers in around the room. It's all in one out of the box. And again, to my point earlier, when talking about Poly as a company, you're getting that industry-leading voice and video quality. And they have some really cool features as well, some proprietary technology that they've implemented in all of these products that is really going to kind of take things to the next level from an audio-visual perspective. So starting from the video perspective, they have smart framing with these cameras for meeting equality. And what I mean by that is when COVID hit, of course, there was the initial fear that, everybody was going to go home, productivity was going to drop off a cliff. I think a lot of executives were panicking a bit about sending their workforce out to go work from home. Well, what we really realized is that was not really the case. And a lot of times productivity spiked. You're cutting out commutes. People's offices are right next to their bedroom. So people ended up working longer hours. And from a meeting perspective, folks have really enjoyed it much more because when you're utilizing Teams or Zoom, you have your own camera, you have your own display. And when you're in the actual meeting, you're framed with your name and you have some feeling of voice or importance in that meeting, as opposed to rewind 2 years. You might have been in a 30-man boardroom sitting in the very back. You can't hear over the AC. No one's talking to you. No one maybe even knows you're in the room. So we found when people started working from home, that meeting equality was really important to them. And it was really driving a lot of productivity in the meeting. So we wanted to keep that as we return to the office, or, it may be more of a hybrid workplace where you're in the office sometimes, on the road sometimes. That's been Poly's goal, is to keep that meeting equality. So you'll be able to do that with this device. What it's going to do is, if there's 6 of you sitting in this conference room, This is going to track the speakers and it's going to frame them individually, just like if you were at home with your personal device on your personal square in your team's meeting. So that's been a very big driver for Poly, and something that's really gotten some traction within the customer base. But on the audio side, they also have some really, really cool features that I'm going to touch on here. To begin, they have what's called noise block AI. And what noise block AI will allow you to do. Again, let's go back to our previous example. We're in a conference room, and that noisy AC that's in the back is distracting, and maybe Linda's eating a bag of chips. It was a lunchtime meeting, and John is trying to catch up from being out last week. He's hammering away at emails on his laptop, and the keys are loud. Noise block AI will pick up all of the sounds in the room that are non-human, non-organic, and will get rid of them. So that AC, those keys, the chips crackling, you're not going to hear any of that on the other end of the call. And that's important, especially when you're talking about larger rooms where you might have less control on what's going on from a sound perspective. And the other prong of that is the acoustic fencing for Poly. And what that does is that it will actually set a fence around the meeting room so that every noise outside of that fence, could be human, could be non-human, whatever it is, nothing is getting through that fence. And that's a really, really cool piece of technology that they have there. I've been on quite a few calls with some of my colleagues at Poly, and they'll have their dog barking in the background. I see it barking, I can't hear it at all, and that's critical. So again, from an audio video perspective, you are really getting top of the line in the industry. The last thing I want to touch on with the X30 is that you can do wired or wireless content sharing, which is huge as well. You can share, again, you have the brains in this sound bar here, so you can share just like you would on your computer with a regular Teams meeting, or you can bring your laptop in, your phone, whatever device you may have, and it does have a USB port, and you can put it in USB mode for content sharing that way as well. Now, when you're considering the X30 from a room perspective, the sweet spot here is really going to be on your larger huddle rooms and your smaller conference rooms. Think like 6 to 8 people. And again, the limiting factor with the X30 is going to be more so the sound quality. You're going to want to, once you get much beyond that, it's going to be a little bit harder for it to pick up on all the speakers. It's going to be a little bit harder maybe for everyone to hear in the back. But that's the niche for the X30. And then moving on to the X50. So as you see, it's looks like a bigger version of the X30. And I won't go through all of the features because, again, I think you'll see that there's a lot that are similar to the X30, but it does have some differentiators that I want to touch on. The main one is that, again, you're getting a bigger sound bar here. There's a greater microphone array in there, so it's going to be able to pick up more speakers in a larger room. And you have a lot more stereo speakers built into that bar as well, so you're getting more sound output. So it's more expansive and rangy than the X30. But the other big feature that you want to keep in mind here is that it supports dual display. And so if you have a conference room where you might have 2 displays up, the X50 is really going to be a good fit for you there. The cool thing about that is you're actually going to be able to have your live meeting on one display and share content on the second. So it can do a lot of really interesting things. And again, the niche here is going to be kind of that smaller conference room, when you're getting up past 6 to 8 people, up to that smaller mid-size conference room. The big limiting factor here with the X50 is going to be the camera. You don't want to go much past 15 feet from a camera depth perspective. Past that all of that amazing technology that Poly built in there, their AI technology, their camera tracking, that meeting equality, you might run into some issues past that 15-foot mark. So that's really where those are going to fit in well. And I know probably the next question would be, well, you've shown me the personal stuff, you've shown me the stuff for the smaller huddle rooms, smaller personal breakout rooms, all the way up to kind of your mid to small size conference rooms. What if I have a medium sized conference room? What if I have a large size conference room? What if I have a big boardroom? What if I have an auditorium or a training room that I'm looking to outfit? What do I use there? The X30 and the X50 are maybe not going to be the best options for you there. And that's where my next slide comes in. And these products were just announced by Poly. So we're very excited about them, and I'm excited to share them with you. And to start, I'm going to touch on the E70 camera. So this was just announced by Poly. This is essentially their version. They have a product called their Eagle Eye Director 2. Without getting too technical or in the weeds, it has 2 optical cameras. They move autonomously. They do all of the tracking and picking up the different speakers in the room. It's a very, very powerful camera. Now, it has a very high price point. The E70 is the digital version of that. So it's giving you all of that power with a much smaller footprint, as you'll see in this picture here. It's really aesthetically pleasing. You can barely notice it in that conference room. You just set the small camera on top. So it's a much smaller footprint, much smaller price tag as well, but you're still getting that really robust video features. Again, you're talking dual lens with 4K sensors, so it's picking up every speaker in the room. The dual lens will give you of the actual live meeting, while the non-working lens is going to be picking up the speakers. So we're very excited about this. It's a very, very cool camera. We've already got a lot of traction with this product. But this leads me into the X70, which Poly just announced as well. And again, we can get Smarter Systems pricing on this now, and we expect to have inventory in this around mid-January. So this is right on the horizon. But this is going to be the industry standard for those medium to large to even beyond auditorium-sized rooms. This is a very exciting piece of equipment for us. And what they did here is, as opposed to using the camera from the X30 and the X50, they're using that E70 camera that we just saw, that digital Eagle Eye Director 2 camera, is what's being used in the center of this X70. So you're getting all of that functionality. You're getting the dual lenses, the 4K sensors, and you're getting it in a bigger soundbar. So again, just like the X50 to the X30, the X70 to the X50 is going to give you a lot more sound, and it's going to pick up a lot more sound as well. So it's going to be able to track better. Actually attended a demo of the Studio X70, and I was on the other end of the call. It was a large, probably 40-foot conference room. One of my colleagues was sitting in the back, and she was whispering. Now, granted, it was quiet in the room at the time, but she was whispering in the very back of the room, and this camera picked her up. I could hear her like she was whispering in my ear. It's very, very, very powerful technology here. So again, this is what we're very excited about. This is going to really set the standard once you get into those larger rooms. And it really closes the gap, the product portfolio gap for Poly. But I think you'll see kind of across the line with vendors coming up with that medium to large room, and even beyond that has been a little bit of a challenge as you're dealing with a lot of components. We think this is going to set the standard for the industry. So you're getting, again, everything that you have with the X30, the X50, but you're getting a lot more from a sound and video perspective. The last feature that I really wanted to touch on, and this isn't um, exclusive to the X70. This is with all the products we talked about today. But another reason why you should consider Poly is software called the Poly Lens. And this gives you a little bit more control too. Your IT department will appreciate Poly Lens. What it does is it's an app that you download on your computer. I have it on mine right now. And any devices you have, you can deploy them, you can configure them, you can push out firmware updates, you can troubleshoot. Um, let's say your conference room X70 is having some issues for whatever reason. You can pull up PolyLens, see that there's an issue, it's not connected. Maybe you still don't know why, but you don't have to figure it out. You can open a ticket directly with Poly. So again, this is going to take a lot of burden off of your IT department, and it's going to make things a lot easier to manage for you guys. And also, again, if you're pushing out updates or anything like that, you can do everything all at once or control. If you want to do it segmented, but it's very cool software that they've developed that is really more so for the IT department and to help you guys save costs there.